All right, let's dive into one of the great and frankly terrifying puzzles of the 20th century. We're going to talk about how the most destructive weapons ever invented somehow became the foundation for a very strange and fragile kind of peace.
I mean, just think about that question for a second. It sounds like a complete riddle, right? And that is the absolute core paradox of the Cold War. How did humanity build weapons capable of total annihilation and then just not use them? The answer, you'll see, is as fascinating as it is frightening. And this all brings us to what's known as the atomic paradox. The creation of these weapons completely flipped the script. It forced a total shift in how entire countries had to think about the very idea of survival. You see, for pretty much all of human history, war had winners and losers. That was the game. But the atomic bomb just shattered that rulebook. All of a sudden, a full-on war between the superpowers meant one thing: a global, civilization-ending event. The old strategies were completely useless, and a radical, new way of thinking was absolutely essential. So, what did this new thinking actually look like? Well, it started with a concept that, on the surface, sounds pretty logical, almost noble even: a strategy of strength. The official strategy that NATO came up with was called nuclear deterrence. The idea is actually pretty simple. You build a military that is so powerful, with weapons so devastating, that no rational enemy would even dream of attacking you. It's basically the ultimate don't even think about it policy, where peace is supposedly guaranteed by showing off your overwhelming strength. And, this wasn't just some abstract theory. Nope, this became the public, official doctrine of world leaders, and probably the most famous example of this was U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Now, when you read that quote, what's really interesting is just how clean and confident it all sounds. Eisenhower isn't framing this massive atomic arsenal as a tool for war. He's framing it as a tool for preventing war. The stockpile itself is the peacekeeper. And this really gets to the core principle. It's a game where the price of entry is so incredibly high for everybody that nobody would be dumb enough to make the first move. Simple, right? Well, that's where the nice, clean, official story ends, and the terrifying reality begins. Because underneath that respectable surface of nuclear deterrence was a much darker, and let's be honest, a much more primal force at work. The strategists, the military planners, the people in the room. They knew what this so-called balance of power was really about. It wasn't about strength, not really. It was about something else entirely. And there it is, mutually assured destruction. I mean, its acronym, MAD, has to be one of the most fitting in all of history. Because here's the crucial part. The promise wasn't just that an attacker would lose. The promise was that any attack would trigger the complete, total, undeniable annihilation of both sides. Everyone gets wiped out. So this brings us right to the heart of it. This atomic peace wasn't built on treaties or goodwill or trust. It was a peace built on pure, raw, unadulterated fear. This slide just sums it all up perfectly. The official theory, the one you'd hear in speeches, talked about preventing war through strength. Sounds good. But the reality, the actual mechanism that kept the missiles in their silos, was keeping peace through a shared, paralyzing fear of total extinction. That is a profound and incredibly disturbing difference. And what this created was a global stalemate, a standoff on a planetary scale. For decades, the entire world existed in this incredibly delicate, terrifying balance. The logic of MAD meant that the only rational choice, the only winning move for anyone, was to simply refuse to play the game at all. And that leaves us with the critical question, doesn't it? Is this whole architecture of atomic peace a stable thing? Grim, yeah, but effective. Or is its foundation so terrifyingly fragile that it's not a question of if it fails, but when? That is the unnerving legacy of a peace built on the promise of total annihilation.